The Haven County Animal Shelter in July 2021 was a place heavy with more than just the scent of disinfectant. It was heavy with the sounds of lonely animals and the weight of overwhelming numbers. A nationwide surge in pet surrenders, fallout from the pandemic, had flooded shelters, and Haven County was feeling the strain acutely. The facility was beyond full, pushing resources and staff to their breaking points. Sarah Jenkins, the shelter director, carried the burden of 2 decades in animal welfare on her shoulders. Each day presented challenges, but this day felt particularly oppressive. The constant influx of animals meant agonizing decisions were unavoidable. Just as she was grappling with the grim reality, Officer Miguel Ramirez arrived, a standard plastic crate in hand, containing yet another life-needing sanctuary in a place that had none to offer. "We have absolutely no room, Miguel," Sarah stated plainly. Exhaustion etched into her features and her voice. The stark reality was underscored by her next words. "The euthanasia list has 15 dogs this week." 15. Miguel's response was slow, measured, as he adjusted his grip on the crate. "You'll want to make space for this one, Sarah." His tone was low, serious, hinting at the gravity of the situation. "Property foreclosure out near Indio. Looks like the owner walked away months ago." He placed the crate down gently. Sarah peered inside, a shape huddled deep in the back corner, obscured by the dim light. "It's a German Shepherd," Miguel elaborated. "Male, maybe 3 years old, severely emaciated." The details painted a picture of neglect and desperation. He survived by drinking from a leaky hose, scavenging whatever scraps he could find. The yard was overgrown. He was just left there. Abandonment cases were always heart-wrenching for Sarah, but this sounded exceptionally cruel. Miguel then added a detail that turned Sarah's stomach. His collar. It was embedded deep into his neck. He must have grown while wearing it. The implication was sickening: prolonged confinement in a collar that became a torture device as he grew. "We had to get him straight to emergency vet care for surgical removal." Later, Dr. Emily Carter, the shelter's head veterinarian, provided Sarah with the grim medical assessment. Holding a clipboard, her expression somber, she listed the dog's extensive issues: advanced malnutrition. Body score is 2 out of 9. Severe dehydration. He needed Roman 4 fluids immediately. Multiple untreated wounds, hookworms, ear infections, pressure sores from lying in one position too long. Each ailment was a testament to profound and prolonged suffering. While Dr. Carter expressed confidence in their ability to physically rehabilitate the dog, she voiced a deeper concern. "Physically, we can fix most of this," she said, meeting Sarah's gaze. "We can rehabilitate his body. But I'm worried about his mind. His psychological state." Sarah nodded, understanding the often insurmountable challenge of healing invisible wounds. Dr. Carter confirmed her fears. "He's exhibiting extreme fear responses," she explained. "Profound terror at human proximity." This German Shepherd, temporarily named Shadow by the staffer name that tragically fit his tendency to shrink into the corners, was different. Unlike many abused dogs who still yearned for human kindness, Shadow actively recoiled. Any approach sent him pressing into the furthest corner, his thin frame racked with uncontrollable tremors. His eyes, wide with panic, darted ceaselessly, refusing connection. He wouldn't come to the front of the kennel, not even for food. Attempts to leash him resulted in absolute, frozen terror. He became utterly still, locked deep within his fear. Anna Sharma, the shelter's behavioral specialist, tried multiple times to establish even the smallest connection, but each attempt was met with the same impenetrable wall of fear. "It's like he's shut down completely," she observed, her voice laced with frustration and sadness. "He's gone somewhere deep inside himself. Somewhere we can't reach." 2 weeks passed. The dedicated staff, using all their expertise and patience, made no progress. Shadow remained a ghost in his kennel. Security cameras revealed his nighttime behavior, emerging only when the building was empty. He paced in tight, anxious circles, a physical manifestation of his deep-seated distress, offering no relief. Facing this lack of improvement, Sarah called a staff meeting in early August. The mood was heavy. "We're running out of options," Sarah admitted quietly. "He's not improving. We can't keep him in this state indefinitely." The unspoken reality hung in the air. "If we can't find a specialized rescue group by Friday, We may need to make a difficult decision. Euthanasia, though never spoken lightly, was sometimes the only humane option left for an animal trapped in insurmountable psychological torment. On Thursday afternoon, the day before Shadow's deadline, Anna Sharma felt drawn back to his kennel. She decided on one final, different approach. She didn't try to interact directly. Instead, she sat on the cool concrete floor in the corridor outside his kennel, her back resting against the opposite wall. Taking out a paperback, she began reading aloud in a calm, steady, soft voice, narrating tales of faraway places while pretending to ignore the dog. For nearly an hour, she simply maintained this non-threatening presence, existing near him without demand. As she slowly stood up to leave, she glanced towards the kennel. Shadow was still in his corner, but there was a change. His head was slightly raised. His amber eyes were tracking her movement, watching her. For a brief, significant moment, their gazes met. It was the first flicker of outwardly directed awareness, the first voluntary eye contact he had initiated. Filled with a sudden surge of hope, Anna hurried to Sarah's office. "I need 48 more hours," she urged. "Please, Sarah, just 2 more days. I think there's still someone in there." "I saw it." Sarah hesitated, acutely aware of their strained resources and the fragility of hope in their difficult work. But Anna's conviction was undeniable. Trusting her specialist's instinct, Sarah reluctantly agreed. "All right, Anna. 48 hours, but that's it." Neither could have foreseen the arrival of the visitor who would appear the next day and irrevocably change Shadow's fate. Meyer Hayes hadn't planned on visiting the Haven County Animal Shelter that Friday. At 34, she was navigating the complexities of a demanding physical therapy career at Eisenhower Medical Center and the personal adjustments following a recent divorce. Living in a small rental cottage in Palm Desert, she was focused on rebuilding her life, and the dog was absolutely not part of her current equation. She was simply dropping off donated towels and blankets, a nod to her mother's past volunteer work there. David Chen, the weekend supervisor, overheard her mention her mother and offered a quick tour of the upgraded facility. Meyer, despite her tight schedule, agreed, her curiosity piqued. David showed her the main adoption areas, bright and renovated, filled with hopeful animals. Meyer smiled and offered kind words but felt no specific pull until they reached the end of the corridor, near the restricted area for medical and behavioral cases. "Mind if we peek anyway?" she asked, feeling an unexpected draw. Mom always had a soft spot for the tough cases. David agreed, cautioning her to keep her distance from the kennels housing dogs working through significant issues. As they walked through the rehabilitation section, David briefly described the residents, dogs recovering from surgery, illness, or needing time to gain strength. Then they reached the last kennel, slightly isolated. "This is our most challenging case right now," David said quietly, gesturing towards the dim interior. "German Shepherd, about 3 years old, found abandoned. He's been here almost 3 weeks, still won't come out of that corner." He explained the hope was for a specialized rescue, given the need for extensive rehabilitation. Meyer stopped, her attention captured by the huddled figure pressed against the back wall. Faint amber eyes glowed in the shadows, watching warily, a deep tremor shaking the dog's thin frame. "What's his story?" she asked softly. David recounted the known facts: abandonment, suspected abuse or isolation, the complete withdrawal and paralyzing fear, devoid of any aggression. Meyer stood watching the dog, who seemed barely to breathe. Then, acting purely on instinct, she lowered herself to the floor outside his kennel, sitting cross-legged, back against the opposite wall, unknowingly mirroring Anna's posture from the previous day. "What are you doing?" David asked, surprised. "I'm not sure," Meyer admitted honestly, "just giving him some space, while still being present." She asked if she could sit there for a few minutes while David attended to medication rounds. He agreed, saying he'd return in 15 minutes. Left alone, Meyer sat quietly, not talking, not staring, simply existing. Shadow remained frozen in his corner, but his eyes never left her. He watched her constantly. After about 10 minutes, an almost imperceptible shift occurred, a slight easing of his rigid posture, a fractionally deeper breath. When David returned, Meyer reported no major change but asked, "I'd like to come back tomorrow, if that's okay." David, surprised again, readily agreed but managed her expectations about the slow nature of such cases. As Meyer stood to leave, She glanced back. Shadow had shifted slightly, still in the corner, but watching her departure with an expression holding a nascent flicker of curiosity. Meyer couldn't articulate the sudden, intense connection she felt to this specific, deeply wounded animal, a pull rooted in something neither she nor the shelter staff could yet fathom. Meyer returned the next morning, prepared for a longer stay. She brought a folding camp chair, a novel, and a small Bluetooth speaker playing soft classical music. Anna Sharma met her, expressing cautious optimism. As Meyer approached Shadow's kennel, Anna noted a subtle but distinct reaction. His ears, usually flattened in fear, twitched slightly forward. "That's interesting," Anna murmured. "He seems unusually alert to your arrival." Setting up her chair about 6 feet away, angled slightly, Meyer asked Anna if she could simply sit with him. Anna agreed, reiterating the need for calm movements and avoiding direct stares. For the next 3 hours, Meyer created a zone of quiet presence. She read, sometimes silently, sometimes aloud in a soft, rhythmic cadence. She worked on her laptop. All the while, she remained aware of Shadow's gaze on her. Around noon, Anna brought Meyer lunch and asked about progress. "He moved," Meyer whispered, a small smile forming. "About an hour ago. He came to the middle of the kennel. He's been watching me. He returns to his corner whenever other people walk by, but when it's just me, he stays closer." Anna confirmed this remarkable development. Shadow was voluntarily closer to the front than ever before. Later that afternoon, the most significant breakthrough occurred. After a period of silent reading, Meyer sensed movement. Looking up slowly, she saw Shadow standing right at the front of the kennel, near the wire mesh door. He was alert, watching her intently, his gaze now holding more curiosity than fear. Moving with deliberate slowness, Meyer shifted her chair a foot closer. Shadow tensed but held his ground. Meyer resumed reading aloud, her voice a calming anchor. Sarah Jenkins and Anna Sharma observed this scene from a distance, astonished. "I've never seen him this far from his corner," Sarah whispered. "Never? What did she do?" Anna replied with wonder. "Nothing. She just existed near him, patiently, without demands. She gave him space and time." Before leaving that evening, Meyer secured permission from Sarah to return daily. Sarah, seeing the undeniable progress, immediately updated Shadow's status, putting any decisions about his future on hold indefinitely. As Meyer left the corridor, Shadow retreated to his corner, but the movement seemed less frantic. Their eyes met briefly. "See you tomorrow, Shadow," Meyer said softly. The specific reason for Shadow's unique response to Meyer remained a mystery, a connection deeper than simple patience, soon to be revealed. Meyer rearranged her life, juggling patients to ensure she could spend at least 2 hours daily at the shelter. Each day brought small but crucial steps forward. By the end of the first week, Shadow consistently approached the kennel door when Meyer arrived, holding his ground longer each time. Anna marveled at the speed of the bonding, unprecedented for such a traumatized, shut-down dog. Meyer herself felt an odd sense of familiarity, confessing to Anna, "It feels like we've met before. Like he somehow recognizes me," though she dismissed it as impossible. Day 10 marked another huge milestone. Shadow gently took treats from Meyer's hand through the bars, his muzzle brushing her fingers. Witnessing this prompted Sarah to ask Meyer about fostering, but Meyer regretfully cited her rental's no-pet policy, adding she was actively seeking pet-friendly housing. That same afternoon, Meyer received a call from Dr. Nathan Wells, a neurologist colleague, requesting her expertise for a challenging home-based physical therapy case. Captain Ben Walker, a veteran, needed help managing the effects of a traumatic brain injury, TBI, and severe PTSD resulting from an IED explosion in Afghanistan 3 years prior. He had become extremely withdrawn and refused hospital visits. Meyer, having experience with veterans, agreed, scheduling the initial assessment for the next morning. Arriving at Ben Walker's modest Lequinter home, Meyer was briefed by his VA social worker about the severity of his trauma and his near-total social withdrawal. Inside, Ben sat in a wheelchair, physically strong but tense and guarded, staring out a window. He acknowledged Meyer with a barely perceptible nod. As introductions were made, Ben turned slightly, studying Meyer intently. A look of confusion crossed his face. "Have we met before?" he asked, his voice rasped. Meyer gently replied she didn't think so, having moved to the area recently. The assessment proceeded quietly but cooperatively, surprising the social worker with Ben's level of engagement. Later that day, back at the shelter, Meyer noticed Shadow sniffing her shoes and pant legs, the same clothes she'd worn to Ben's house, with unusual intensity. A thought began to form. She asked Anna if Shadow had any known military history, but there was none on record. 2 days later, arriving for Ben's second session, Meyer was met by ferocious, anguished barking from inside. The social worker explained Ben had endured terrible nightmares involving a dog he worked with in Afghanistan, a military dog lost during the same explosion that injured him. Meyer's heart began to race. Did he mention what kind of dog? She asked, her voice trembling slightly. A German Shepherd, the social worker confirmed. Named Shadow. The revelation hit Meyer with the force of a physical blow. Could it be the name, the breed? Shadow's strange reaction to her scent carrying traces from Ben's home, Ben's own flicker of recognition. It seemed impossible, yet the pieces clicked into place with unnerving clarity. During Ben's therapy session, Meyer struggled to focus. Afterwards, she carefully asked, "Your dog in Afghanistan? The one you lost? What happened to him?" Pain flashed in Ben's eyes before his guard slammed back down. Shadow, he confirmed, the name heavy. He described their partnership, the IED attack, his evacuation, and the devastating news that Shadow had run off, disoriented, and was never found despite searches. His voice tightened with years of suppressed grief. "What did he look like?" Meyer asked softly. Ben described the standard black and tan markings, the blocky head, and then, crucially, he had a scar on his right shoulder from shrapnel during an early emission. He finally looked at her, curiosity peaked. Why all these questions about Shadow? Taking a deep breath, Meyer laid out the improbable truth. "This might sound crazy, but I've been visiting a German Shepherd at the county shelter. Found abandoned. Extremely traumatized. No one can get near him, except me." Ben remained skeptical. "This one," Meyer stated quietly, holding his gaze. "This one has a scar on his right shoulder." Shocked disbelief and the sudden raw hope wore on Ben's face. That's not possible," he stammered. Meyer gently suggested the possibility of military dogs being returned stateside, adopted out, perhaps falling through the cracks. Ben gripped his wheelchair, asking in a near whisper, Do you have a picture?" Meyer showed him the photos on her phone. Ben scanned them intently, his breathing shallow. I can't tell for sure," he said, choked with emotion. "The photos aren't clear enough for the scar, but the markings, they look right. There's one way to find out," Meyer replied softly. "Would you be willing to come to the shelter to see him?" Within the hour, arrangements were made. Sarah Jenkins facilitated a private after-hours visit. Meyer drove a tense Ben to the shelter, the car filled with unspoken hope and fear. Anna Sharma met them, explaining Shadow was in a quiet meet-and-greet room. She gently reminded Ben that the dog's well-being was paramount. Any severe stress would end the visit. Ben nodded wordlessly. Meyer wheeled Ben just inside the room. Shadow, pacing at the far end, hadn't seen them yet. Then Ben spoke, his voice transformed sharp, clear, the authoritative tone of command, retention. Shadow's reaction was instantaneous and electric. His head snapped up, ears erect, body rigid. He stared across the room, nose twitching rapidly, processing the scent, the voice connecting past and present. Then Ben spoke again, his voice breaking, filled with 3 years of pent-up grief and longing. "Shadow, come." The dog, who had been paralyzed by fear, launched himself across the room like a guided missile. Fear evaporated, replaced by pure, unadulterated joy and recognition. He crashed into Ben's wheelchair, whining, yipping, desperately trying to get closer. Ben buried his face in Shadow's fur, his body shaking with silent sobs. Shadow whimpered and licked his face, a whirlwind of loving energy. The bond, severed by trauma and distance, was instantly, miraculously rekindled. Anna and Meyer watched through tears. "Well," Anna whispered, "I think that answers the question." Investigations revealed Shadow, officially canine T-167, had indeed survived the explosion, was returned to the U.S. treated, but deemed unsuitable for further service due to canine PTSD. He was adopted out, lost track of, and eventually abandoned. The exact path mattered less than the destination. Back with his handler, the reunion sparked healing for both. Ben, motivated by the need to care for Shadow, pushed himself in physical therapy. Shadow, grounded by Ben's presence, instinctively resumed his role as a support partner, gently nudging Ben during difficult exercises. His fear of strangers diminished under Ben's patient guidance. Both man and dog began to mend, physically and psychologically. Haven County transferred Shadow's ownership to Ben through Pets for Vets. The community rallied, providing fencing and supplies. Meyer's role evolved. Professional sessions blended into companionship, shared meals, and deepening conversations. Ben started sharing his story, his struggles, his tentative hopes for the future. He acknowledged Shadow's immediate recognition of Meyer as someone safe. Meyer, in turn, felt they had recognized the broken pieces in each other. 6 months later, Ben met Meyer at the door for his final PT session, standing tall and unassisted, Shadow proudly beside him. Both radiated health. After the successful evaluation, Ben surprised Meyer with an official job offer, a lead physical therapist position in the VA new canine therapy program, a role essentially created for her unique skill set, thanks to Ben's recommendation. Then, nervously, Ben asked the question Meyer had been hoping for. "Now that you're not officially my therapist anymore, I was hoping, maybe, you'd consider dinner sometime." A slow, joyous smile spread across Meyer's face. "I thought you'd never ask," she whispered. As she stepped closer, Shadow let out a soft woof of approval, standing happily between the two people he loved, the two people he had brought back together. Their story became a celebrated success, documented and shared, inspiring others. Shadow, once deemed lost, became an ambassador for healing, visiting the shelter, his calm presence a testament to the power of reconnection and the profound, often mysterious ways lives intertwine, mending fractures and creating something stronger and whole.